Hello everyone, welcome to the third and the final day of the 8th edition of LA Blockchain Summit. Today is Blockchain Builders Day. Today you're going to experience a number of sessions by prominent blockchain founders and leaders who are going to talk directly to blockchain enthusiasts and developers. I'm really excited for today and I hope you are too. Here to kick things off for the day is Matthew Merle of Blockchain Co-Investors and Fifth Era with his 2022 blockchain predictions.
Thank you very much. And hopefully up on the screen, you can see our presentation. Can you see that?
Matt, if you could put that into full screen, that'd be great.
It is in full screen. It is in full screen.
Good to go.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me here. It's always great to be at the LA Blockchain Summit. What I'm going to do very quickly in just 10 minutes is talk about what some of the most important predictions we have for blockchain next year. Thank you very much, team, for already talking about the disclaimer. Since we are a fund manager, I cannot make any solicitations and I don't plan to. Instead, we're just going to talk about what we see coming up in the area of blockchain. And this is, for us, an area that we've talked about every year for the last few years. This is our predictions from last year, and I'm pleased to say that almost all of them came out to be true. Of course, I'm not going to go through last year's predictions today. Here's the 10 predictions that we do want to make today, and I have a page on each of them, and we'll come back to this list at the end. The first is we think and we expect that in 2022, all of the world's leading fiat currency centers will move forward with the creation of their own digital currencies in some form. At minimum, they will announce pilots. At this point, China is moving a couple of years ahead of the EU, UK, and US. And in the world of global payments and global finance, no national entity can afford to be 2 and 3 years off the pace. The EU and the UK have begun to explore their own pilots. Here in America, our own treasury is a little bit further behind. There is clearly a question about whether national entities would prefer to have CBDCs or whether they planned to legitimate stable coins. And we are seeing moves here in the US to give banks the authority to issue stable coins, and perhaps that will be the alternative to a treasury-backed stable coin. We'll find out in 2022. But that's our first prediction. Our second is that the bank ecosystem players more broadly will begin at a much more rapid rate to offer crypto. To date, on the left-hand side, you can see, as of a few months ago, the landscape of the US banking industry. Globally, we have perhaps 25,000 banks. There isn't a good count of them. Here in America, we have about 4,500 banks, and only perhaps 50 banks worldwide have a fully functional digital wallet that can already leverage and use crypto as well as other types of digital asset. And of course, you can't have digital monies and you can't have digital assets until you have digital wallets. So the banking industry is not well positioned to support the future of digital monies and digital assets. So it turns out, if you look through the distribution of the banks, the very largest on the left-hand side of this page, Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan, they're able to create proprietary technology solutions and have their own digital wallets. Perhaps the next bar, the pale blue 137 institutions, can do the same, but all of the others don't have internal technology development teams. And so they rely upon third parties, people like FIS and Fiserv and Global Payments, as well as newer players like PayPal and Square. And we think there will be an awful lot of third-party digital wallet solutions being brought to market, targeting the traditional financial players, including the banks, in 2022. Our third prediction is that we will see the move towards more hybrid wallets. This is a trend we've talked about for a number of years now. In crypto, as well as in fintech more broadly, most wallets have very narrow purposes. They tend to be single purpose wallets. And so on the left-hand side, you may have your banking app, you may have your payments app, your crypto app, your investment app. And in China, we're beginning to see the collapsing together of multi-purpose hybrid wallets. WeChat and Alipay, of course, support multiple financial products in a single, easy-to-use solution. And we think we're going to see more of that. So we've begun to hear of major players, the Coinbases of the world as an example, beginning to talk about offering other financial products through their digital wallets, their crypto wallets, but we think that will accelerate in 2022. So you should expect your crypto wallet not only to give you crypto access, it may, depending upon what jurisdiction you're in, allow you to have fractionalized private equities, such as the Uphold wallet does offshore to us in the US. But we do expect to see lending and borrowing and cards and payments all integrated into the major wallets. Our fourth prediction has to do with ETFs. For the last 3 years, I believe it is, we have said that we think ETFs will not occur quickly. But this year, of course, we've had a sort of ETF launch, the Bitcoin Futures ETF from ProShares on the top right-hand side of this chart. Now, for purists like us here at Blockchain Co-Investors, Alison, my co-partner, is the former CFO of BGI BlackRock. She launched iShares and incubated it under her watch, which is today the world's largest ETF firm and company. For us, a real Bitcoin ETF has got to be secured by Bitcoin itself. It needs to be highly efficient, so it cannot have layers of additional cost, and it has to properly track the underlying asset. You can't have the risks of contango and other spreads within the product, and a futures ETF does have severe limitations. So we actually do believe now that a Bitcoin spot ETF will be approved in 2022. And for full disclosure, as investors in 400 blockchain companies and projects, including Bitwise and Grayscale, we obviously have reasons to want to see that happen. Now, in terms of funding of blockchain and crypto projects and companies, I did mention we are the leading blockchain fund of funds globally, and we are investors in about 400 projects and companies already. But we are seeing an enormous acceleration of capital flowing into the early and mid stages of the blockchain space. We've also seen enormous appreciation in the valuations. We do not believe that's going to slow down anytime soon. This is through Q2 21 from the block, this page. But we think that throughout 2022, we'll see an awful lot of capital coming into the blockchain space. Our sixth prediction has to do with NFTs specifically. We have watched and been involved over the decades in the rolling out of electronic commerce, in the formation of the first app stores at Google, Apple, and elsewhere. We've seen the rolling out of mobile gaming and then social gaming and apps. And in every case, it's followed roughly the same curve, which is to say, when you get started, there's very few solutions and they tend to be very successful. They monetize very well. And then we see an enormous wall of offerings, and eventually it becomes very difficult to make your offerings successful. And so in the case of NFTs, right now, we have handfuls of NFTs launching, and we're seeing great uptick and volumes and monetization of many of the NFTs. But by the time we get, as in this chart, there are now 3.5 million apps on the Apple App Store. There's more than 1 million video games on the Apple App Store, and most of them don't monetize at all. And so our expectation is that we'll begin to see NFTs becoming more of a hit-driven business, with a bifurcation of NFTs between those that are highly successful and those that may be successful within a smaller community, but have difficulty getting traction globally. Our seventh prediction is one that we've actually repeated every year for the last few years. We think there'll be a lot more blockchain unicorns. Last year, we predicted more than 10. Twice a year, we publish a list of all of the blockchain unicorns. You can see that on the right from mid-year this year. Those that are enterprises worth more than $1 billion. There were 29 at mid-year this year. And then the crypto projects with market capitalizations more than $1 billion. There were 76 of those at mid-year this year. And we're investors in more than half of them in the early stage. We expect that in 2022, this trajectory will actually steepen. So we think we're being pretty conservative to say 10 new blockchain enterprise unicorns. And we expect on the next page, we actually expect that the crypto projects will also see a good number of new unicorns next year. That was the crypto projects. Of course, we're seeing the dominance of Bitcoin and Ether and others stay pretty consistent. There's ups and downs, but the big news actually is that a rising tide is carrying all ships. And so even though we're seeing a proliferation of tokens and crypto projects, we're also seeing many, many more move up into the ranks of multi-billion-dollar market cap tokens, and we expect that will accelerate also in 2022. Now, moving right along, the corollary, the other side of the coin on this is we're also losing blockchain unicorns as some of them choose to go public, which is, of course, an interesting dynamic. We think that most blockchain projects do not need to be public. They can be tokenized and they can be supported by their communities. They don't need traditional listings on old stock exchanges. However, for some of them, it makes sense to be public companies. They're going to have to go through the scrutiny of the regulators anyhow, if they're very financial services and fintech focused. And being a public company, sometimes it helps raise capital and sometimes it gives you a better stance with which to interact with other large enterprises. And so the Coinbases and the eToros and the Backs of the world have already either gone public or they're in the process of doing so. But we think at least 10 more blockchain companies will go public in 2022. And some of those names have already been written, the Bullishes and the Circles, but there's a lot more coming. And then the last prediction is a non-prediction. It's been true every year for as long as we can remember that private equity, early stage venture capital, is the highest returning or close to the highest returning asset class in the world. And what this page shows you is the 25-year returns for different types of investment. The fixed income, 3%, which once adjusted for inflation, means you're probably getting close to zero return on fixed income. In many parts of the world, you right now have a negative return on cash, which is sort of interesting. It means you get charged for leaving your money with your bank. The public equities, 10 or 11% for most public equities over the long term. But then we have the venture index, and what's so important about those blue bars is that whilst the average is already high, the US venture capital index, 36% net return to investors, the real secret is early stage venture. Early stage venture over the last 25 years, partially driven by the dot-com boom, showing outrageously high returns. So those are our 10 predictions for 2022. In prior years, most of our predictions have been on point. We hope that these will be too. And if you're an entrepreneur, we think it could not be a better time than to be building code on top of blockchain and distributed ledger, whether you are a tokenized project or an equity-based company. If you're an investor and you haven't already joined us, we hope you will. This is an exceptional time. For those of you who want to learn more about us, just please come to blockchaincoinvestors.com. And with that, I will wrap up. Thank you very much, the LA Blockchain team, for having me here. We hope that this was helpful. Thank you very much.